Hey guys, just want to say this is a very special podcast because we have taken over Andre's podcast, David. Isn't that right?
I didn't realize I was in Andre's seat. That's big, shoes to fill right
That's
there.
a big seat to fill.
Yeah.
And the reason that we're doing this podcast today is because David and I did something I think extraordinarily cool, which is we drove an electric truck, the Ford F-150 Lightning, from Detroit all the way up to Dead Horse, which is as far north as you can drive in the United States. And in this podcast, David, since you were a very big part of this, actually you made this happen, we're going to give you all the behind the scenes. We're going to tell the story of how we got there. We're going to tell the story of how, even though some people on YouTube think we didn't, how we drove through Canada. And we're going to tell you some of the crazy stuff that happened. So what do you say? Should we just start from the beginning?
Let's start from the beginning. We had two trucks, and we had to get both trucks to the ferry, which is in Bellingham, Washington.
Yeah,
so they had two different routes.
Let's talk about our cutting plan.
Yes. Okay.
So in order to do this, right, there's no fast charging up in Fairbanks. Well, there's fast charging in Fairbanks, but there's nothing up past Fairbanks.
No.
And from Fairbanks to Dead Horse or Prudhoe Bay, it's 500 miles.
500 miles.
And the only way we could do it potentially was to have a camera slash, I'm going to call it emergency charging truck.
Yeah, it's our backup truck.
Yeah. So support truck. So
support truck.
Ford lent us a King Ranch F-150 hybrid.
Very nice truck.
Yeah, with onboard power.
Yeah.
And if you guys have been watching the series, we're going to start from the point where the series has gotten to. So if you're watching the series on TFL Truck, you know that what happened was Andre basically took that truck. We drove it behind the scenes to Sacramento, where our friends at Four Wheel Camper put on basically
Project M,
which is not a full sliding camper. It's the top part of it.
Topper. It bolts to the bed rails.
Yep. And then Andre went camping in it and drove it to Bellingham. That's where we left off the story.
No, he drove it to Seattle and left it at the airport. And he flew home.
So that's as far as we've gotten. And that's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
We used Electrify America chargers.
He slept in the camper for a couple nights.
Yeah. The truck charges at a maximum of 150 kilowatts. Electrify America does 350. He had to charge a lot, but it wasn't horrible. But now here's where the fun part comes. The support truck also had to get there. So let's start with that. So you not only drove the support truck along with the videographer, Cole, and Jay, our producer.
Correct.
From here to Seattle, but you also built an interesting kind of back and forth. Tell me what you put on the back of it.
Well, first of all, I built the insert into the Project
That's right,
M,
yes.
Right? And then I knew that we were going to be traveling with quite a bit of support equipment, and we had no way to secure it in the back of the hybrid. So what do we have? Choices to buy a topper, to put the roof nest on top of it. I decided it'd be better just to build one quickly, right? And so I took the same plywood that I used for the slide-in, and I made a topper that would support the roof nest. And it worked very well because it kept everything out of the dust and the rain, and it kept the roof nest tent on top that we used quite a few times.
Did you put a spoiler on it?
And a spoiler, because I had to. The roof nest was longer than the bed, so both these trucks had a 5.5 foot bed. Okay, essentially the same truck, right? Except one's electric, one's a hybrid. So it was kind of nice that the beds were the same. But yeah, that worked great to secure all of our equipment. And we also brought our friends at Jack's, gave us a cooler, freezer, refrigerator.
Yeah, Jack's is a local sporting goods store, so they give us this expensive
Dometic cooler. Yeah, so we had that in there.
And then you went to Goodwill and bought a bunch of camping stuff.
I did. I figured we got an electric truck, actually two that have onboard power. Why not buy a bunch of electrical appliances and outfit the back, right, so that we could cook whatever we wanted. So
there's 4 plugs in the back of both those trucks.
Yeah. So I could make coffee and cook eggs and toast and make waffles all at the same time.
Yeah, he bought a George Foreman grill.
And a George Foreman grill. It's amazing what you can get at Goodwill, for cheap. Yeah.
And then the other cool thing you did, so keep this in mind, guys, we're also going to be talking about comparing the trucks, and then also we're going to be talking about what it's like to drive an electric truck versus what it would have been like if we had a diesel. We'll get into all that.
Yeah, we will.
We'll talk about how David had to actually fly part of the section because he's not back, so we'll get into that. Okay. But before we get into all that, there's a lot to discuss. Let's let's talk about what you did in the Lightning. So the problem, I shouldn't say the problem, the basic issue with the Project M is that it's just the top of a sliding camper. So you've got the pop-up part and you got the sides.
Yep.
But you attach that to the bed, but then you've got the bed of a truck.
Yeah, you have no storage.
You have no storage. You have no place to sit, really.
And
I guess you could sit on the side.
another issue is the fact that the bed rails support the benches on either side. And if you're sitting in the bed rails, your legs are kind of dangling. So to make it comfortable for sitting and having a table, you need to raise the floor up a little bit, which made a perfect opportunity for having storage. So we had a table, chairs, the poles that slide really nicely underneath it, and it allowed for a table to go across. And I kind of was the one that claimed the camper the whole time.
Yeah.
So I slept in it. I slept in it most of the nights. And the table, what was nice to be able to go incognito sometimes and not raise the top up. And I slept with the top down in the bed, with the table being the bed.
Yeah, if you want to see that, check out the video on TFL Truck. It's called We Have a Cunning Plan, and we show what David built. It's a really good idea. If you guys like it, we actually may sell plans to it or give away plans.
Sure.
I don't know, David. It's up to David. But it made it much easier, and we ate not only in that setup.
When it was raining.
It was raining and when there were mosquitoes.
Yeah.
Well, you also, like you said, slept on it without having to pop the top up, so you could sleep at a hotel.
Yeah,
people didn't know you were in there.
Right, and that's nice because when you pop the top, it kind of shows that somebody's in here. Nobody knew I was in here. And also for security in certain places, it was good to sleep in the truck because we've got this very expensive truck with lots of equipment in the back, and I slept in there for security.
Yeah, so that was great.
Yeah,
and you could keep it on whether it was charging or not. That becomes important later.
Right, we'll talk about that later on.
Yeah, very important. All right, so basically, you and the crew drove to Seattle.
Purdue straight, yeah.
And that was just driving across country.
Yeah, across a lot of states at 80 miles an hour, sometimes a little more.
Now there are two ways you can get up to Fairbanks, where the Dalton Highway starts, right?
Yeah.
Which is really where I shouldn't say the hard part, there was a harder part, but where the difficult kind of off-road, dirt road, no civilization starts.
Yeah.
And that is, you can take the Alaskan Highway, or you could do it the way we did it, which is you get on a ferry in Bellingham, and then you take the ferry up the Inside Passage. So if you guys have been on an Alaskan cruise, that's the Inside Passage.
Yeah.
And then you get off at Haines, Alaska.
Right.
And you cross into Canada. You go across British Columbia. You go through the Yukon Territory.
Yep, a little sliver of British Columbia.
Yep. And then
and then Yukon.
Yeah, and then you kind of jump back into the U.S., go to Tok, and then go up to Fairbanks. Now, people say we cheated by not taking the Alaskan Highway. I say if we had taken the Alaskan Highway, we wouldn't have made it because it washed out.
And time constraints, right? I mean,
we
have limited time, and it's a lot of distance. I mean, normally it takes, if you drive it hard, it would take 4 to 5 days, right? To get there. So, yeah, the ferry took 3 days, but it saved a lot of fuel. And it was the best way for us to get there, to really prove not that we're out to prove anything by this trip, but to show you, what the Lightning can and can't do, right? So we could have done that in just Canada, or we could have just gone to Alaska and showed you the exact same thing, what we're trying to show about the Lightning.
So from a video standpoint, road trip videos are hard.
They are.
After you've seen one road trip part of it, you've seen
right.
It's all kind of the same. It's forest.
That's a lot of miles.
It's a lot of miles of the same thing. Of nothing.
Yeah.
It's
beautiful. It's beautiful, but it's not interesting for you as a viewer.
After the first 2 minutes of watching it.
Yeah.
Right. The story is really about the people you meet along the way.
Exactly.
And not about the scenery passing by. So it would have been probably added 2 weeks. It would have been more expensive in the long run, and we certainly don't have the bandwidth because we're also covering daily news, breaking news, reviewing new vehicles with 7 YouTube channels. There's no way we could do it.
And you as a viewer, you're not going to gain any more knowledge from us going across there. Is what you are going to see, and it's going to be fun what you're going to see in the next few episodes.
All right, so let's just go into this right now.
Okay.
The biggest controversy in a way was we had to figure out how to get you to Alaska without going through Canada. Why is that, David?
Well, because I'm not vaccinated.
Okay.
I don't plan on getting vaccinated, but I called everybody I possibly could to see if you can go across that corner. Canada, impossible.
Yeah,
right?
Canadians will not allow you to go into the country without being vaccinated.
Right. So I had to find a way to get around. So I I was bummed because I thought, well, I can't go, right? I can't go. But I found out that if I got off the ferry a little early at Juneau, then I could fly to Anchorage and then fly to Fairbanks and meet up with the crew, Cole and Jay. I could meet up with them at Fairbanks. But the problem with that is they had to take that trek from Haines to Fairbanks, which we found out was really the toughest part of the journey as far as logistics for the Lightning.
Yeah, and we don't want to go into that because it's their story.
Yes.
And they filmed it, and we'll tell it in one of the episodes.
Good.
So I don't want to
give it away.
Yeah, I don't want to speak out of turn.
Yep.
But we'll tell that story. Basically, the issue is there's one fast charger.
Yes.
And that's a flow fast charger in Haines Junction, which is basically that stretch is, I think, 500 miles altogether.
Yeah, it's a fair piece.
Yeah, a fair piece. And like 100 miles past Haines in Canada and Haines Junction, there's one fast charger. When I say fast, I mean the slowest, fastest DC chargers get.
It's relative, right?
It's a 50 kilowatt hour. So let me,
not all fast chargers are equal, right?
So let me kind of talk about charging, just to give you a background. So there's 3 levels of charging. There's plug and home.
Yep.
So I'll put into real numbers, and this becomes very important later on that you can understand. So, or that make it, you can understand it, but that make it kind of more real. So a Ford Lightning has a 131 kilowatt hour battery, which is a big battery. Big battery. And the bigger battery, the longer it takes. It can basically power your house for 3 days.
Wow.
Air conditioner, freezer, everything running, right?
That's a lot.
No, 4 days, because the average home uses 29 kilowatt hours in America a day, so at 131 kilowatt hours, 4 days of charging. So if you were to plug that thing in, and I'm guessing here, but it's probably pretty close, and plug it off at 120, probably 5 days.
Yeah, a long time.
Yeah, so forget that. That doesn't
110 is out.
Yeah, when we're driving, plug it into 110.
We're going to have 220, 240. Yeah.
Not going to do us any good.
Yeah.
So then you get to level 2 charging, which is kind of the chargers that people have at home. So think of it as your dryer or washer plug. And this becomes challenging because there are many different washer
maybe maybe
plugs.
20 different adapters that you would have to have all of them, depending on the outlet plug. Yeah, what year it was put in, what use was for.
Yeah.
So taking enough adapters is you'd have a whole frunk full of adapters,
And we ran into that issue.
Right.
And we'll talk about that in a second. But let's say you're at 240 and you're at 30 amps, which is what those are, right?
Dryer.
Yeah, as a dryer, 30 amp.
Yep.
It's probably going to take, to fill it up completely, 20-ish hours. I think that's right.
18 to 20 hours.
Yeah, so imagine if the battery is drained, which it is.
Yep.
And you pull into like a campground or someone's house and you say, hey, can I borrow your dryer plug, which we did, by the way.
Yep.
And then you plug it in. You're there for 20 hours.
A long time.
A long time. Now, level 3 is DC fast charging.
Well, you missed a step.
Oh yeah.
So like a range or a welder, which we found a welder outlet. It might be a 50 or even a greater.
Yeah.
But it requires a different adapter.
And a different charger.
We took 2 chargers with us, right?
We
took the Ford one, which
amp.
is max 32 amps.
Yeah.
It probably operates more like at 27, 28 amps. Then we took a bigger one, which was at 40 amps, but it probably charges at 37 to 38 amps.
Yeah, and wall chargers are like at 50 amps, but we didn't bring a wall charger.
But if we found a 50 amp outlet, we used it.
Yeah, so the difference, just for you to understand, the difference between a 30 amp and a 40 amp charger is 20%, right? It's 20% more.
Yeah,
so that's in
cuts
real
our
terms,
time.
5 hours.
Yeah.
If it's 20 hours on 30 amps, it's going to be 15 hours on 40 amps.
Yep.
So then, of course, you get into DC fast charging, and like Electrify America fast chargers are anywhere from 150 kilowatts all the way up to 350.
Oh, are they? Wow.
But in Alaska,
no, we never found anything like that.
There are a total, which is a bigger state than Texas, there are a total of 7 fast chargers.
Yeah.
And we used 4 of them. We used 4 of the 7
we did.
in the entire state. And the fastest one of those, which is a Flow, and by the way, Flow sponsors this, so thank you very much. They made it possible.
Yep.
Without, the expense here, you can imagine how much, well, I can tell you how much it costs to take 2 trucks and 3 guys up the Inside Passage on a ferry. Cost about 4 times as much as it would on a cruise. So a cruise, you can probably do that cruise for like $1,500 and you would get nightly entertainment. to bring your truck up there and get a very basic cabin for 2 trucks and 3 guys.
And thank you for getting the cabin.
Yes.
Otherwise, I've been sleeping on the deck.
$7,000.
Yeah, and the cabin's not even as big as his room.
Yeah, and then to get the trucks back, we didn't have the bandwidth to actually drive them back because, once again, same problem.
Yeah.
$6,000 just to get them back not to Colorado, just to Bellingham.
Tacoma, Seattle.
To Tacoma, yeah. So you can do the math, and then, of course, when you get into Alaska, everything is triple as expensive.
Right.
Food, lodging,
Yeah,
everything. Anyway,
everything.
so the fastest charger in Alaska is 50, and on a 50, if that truck were empty, you can do the math. It's 131 kilo, so 2.5 hours.
Yeah, seems like
245.
I was sleeping in the truck while we were charging. I woke up like at 2 o'clock in the morning to check it, and it had bumped me out for some reason at 80%. And then I had to, and we have, you'll see this one too. Then I start it back up and get it charging. The truck has to be set. You have to tell the truck, no, I want to go over 90%. You have to do that before you charge in the middle of the night.
And the weird thing is sometimes you tell it and it won't.
And it won't, yeah.
So you say, I want to go 100%.
And it bumped me out at like 97.
So the range officially by EPA numbers, the range on the Lightning is 310. But we did 2 things that really killed the range.
Yes.
Yeah, we put on off-road tires.
Yes.
Thanks to BFG, they gave them some off-road tires. And we've done a video on that. That took the range down by 10%. And then, of course, we had this whole drama with the camper.
And I've had a slide-in camper for quite some time. And on my diesel truck, I've noticed at very high speeds, it knocks me down by 25% in my fuel economy.
And we also figured out, and you probably can understand this, that exponentially use more energy the faster you go.
Yes.
So the difference between like 10 and 20 isn't all that grand, but the difference between 60 and 70 is huge.
Well, even the difference between 45 and 60 is pretty great. So we had to figure out where the right spot was. We had to hypermile much of this trip,
now,
right?
If you're watching this, you'll probably see this picture, and you can see that we added a fairing, thanks to Colorado Fairing, they made us one.
Yeah, that was great.
To kind of offset the airflow that hits dead on the top of the camper.
Yeah.
And
Andre rigged up something before that, which we used Andre's, and then we just put the other fairing on top of it.
You screwed it over the top to make it taller. And then, of course, you've got the sides of the camper, which also are like a brick in the
Yeah, those corners are hitting flat.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of wind resistance right there. And
the weirdest thing, which I still haven't figured out, is so the payload on the Lightning is about 1,700 pounds, just under. And on the spec sheet, I think that Project M is supposed to be 400 pounds. But somehow, mysteriously, when we put it on and weighed it, the truck had gained 1,200 pounds.
Well, it had 2 fans. That's the basic one, right? Yeah. It had the fans. It had the battery pack. It had a few other, an
axe and
lots of other things. Plus my slide in, plus the refrigerator, freezer, plus our gear, which
So we maxed out the payload.
We were like this close to being max payload.
We were like at 1,650 in the.
We were over 8,000 pounds.
Yeah. So that also makes for bad range. And basically what that means in real life is if you're driving that truck on a full charge, instead of getting 310 miles, you're going to get 200.
And that
at highway speed.
Yeah, well, at 60 to 65.
Yeah, exactly.
Going 75, 80 is, you just believe me, don't do it. Right? Just don't do it. We don't know what it would be to the battery, but it would kill the range significantly. So even driving from, and I got right out of the hybrid, and I gave you my impressions about that. You'll get to see that. But from Tacoma up to Bellingham, a few hours, and I was watching it pretty close, and I kept it at 60 to 65. And I wasn't blocking traffic. It's that part of the country. It's not the straightaway. So that was a good speed to go, and that was getting us the best we could and not being dangerous, right? But we found out later on the trip up to Dalton that the premium speed for the greatest amount of range is what, Roman?
About 45.
About 45.
Yeah.
43, 45.
Yeah, we figured that out because we almost got stranded.
Right.
So let's put that into like easier to understand terms. So Tommy just came back from Germany, where he drove the EQX XX, which is like German Mercedes hypermiling electric vehicle.
But that's a super sleek car.
Super sleek car. I think that gets up to, they got 700 and plus miles on a single charge, on about 100 kilowatt hour battery.
Wow.
When you look at that, then you're looking at like 7 miles of range per kilowatt hour.
Wow.
A normal, like the little Mini, what we have, that's like between 3.5 and 4 miles per
And it
kilowatt.
weighs what, 2,000 pounds?
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah.
A Ford Mach-E might be anywhere from, let's say, 2.5 to 3.5, depending on how you're driving it. We were lucky. If we really worked hard and we went really slow and we used one pedal driving and we didn't have the heater on because it was cold up there.
Right.
And we had the fairing installed, we were lucky to get 2.2.
That's the highest we ever got.
2.2 miles per kilowatt. And if you're basically zipping along at 65, you're going to get 1.6.
Yep.
But yeah, 1.6.
Yep.
So do the math, 130 kilowatts, multiply that by 1.6, and you've got your range.
Yeah. So if we were going to make it all the way from Fairbanks to Dead Horse, we had to hypermile it.
Yeah.
That was our only. Otherwise, we'd be sitting there charging off of the hybrid,
So
which takes forever.
So here's the challenge, right? When you leave Fairbanks, there is a fast charger, and we've charged it up. You charge it up to 100%.
Yeah.
And then there's a little camp called Yukon Camp, which is
Yep.
like this little touristy camp. It's where people go if they want to go to the Arctic Circle, because the Arctic Circle is maybe another, 50 miles past that.
Right, yeah.
But the halfway point to Dead Horse is a little truck stop called Coldfoot.
Right.
So that's 250 basically. It's a little bit less.
Yeah, about there.
Yeah, and then from there, it's another 250 to Dead Horse.
Yeah.
So basically, we had to be able to get 250 miles without charging.
But the problem with that part of the drive was it was up and down a lot.
Oh my God, that's the worst. Yeah, you
Yeah.
made a good analogy. You said it's like riding a bicycle, right? Like figure out what it's like having a lot of weight riding a bicycle up a hill.
Yeah.
It just kills the range.
Even though you're going downhill and you regen, you don't regen enough to compensate for that uphill.
No, that uphill kills you. That rolling
Yeah.
terrain is the worst. And then, of course, we had these knobby tires.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we're on dirt most of the time.
Yep.
Which
a
is
lot of
much,
dirt and mud because it was raining some of it.
Yeah, much more rolling resistance.
So we didn't make it
No.
on one charge.
Well, we may have made it, but we weren't going to risk it. So we stopped at Yukon, Camp Yukon.
Because we started out going 50 some.
Yeah, we started going like normal, 55.
Right. The speed limit is 50 that whole road,
Yeah.
right? But we were going 50, 55, somewhere in there. And then we realized, hey, we're not going to make it.
No.
So then we dropped our speed down after that.
But we did charge.
We did charge off the hybrid.
We topped it up for the first time.
Yep.
Probably how long were we there, would you say? Maybe
2-3 hours.
Yeah, so you figure on that hybrid, you're getting about 7 miles of range per hour.
We only added like 30, 40 miles, I think.
I don't think even that much.
Not even that much.
I think like 15, maybe more, maybe 20
Yeah.
if we're lucky.
But we rolled into Coldfoot late and almost empty.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
On electrons.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so here's the thing that I had an epiphany, right? So people are going to be like, well, you cheated. You didn't charge off the grid. Well, there's no grid.
No, there is no grid. There's diesel generators.
So the question is, if we charge off the hybrid, right, we're charging off of gas.
Or diesel.
Or
Gas.
Hybrid, yeah.
Yeah, off the hybrids,
We're
gas.
charging off of gas. Then we drive to Coldfoot.
It's diesel.
And we'll talk about that. It's cold. It's diesel.
Yep.
And then we drive to Dead Horse and we're charging up there. And,
Natural gas.
And so none of it is renewable.
And if you charge, there's one little spot even.
Yeah.
I mean, people, there is nothing. When I say nothing, I mean pump stations.
That's
that
it.
road has no houses.
And they're not exactly welcoming those pump stations.
No, they don't want you in there.
Yeah.
You have the pipeline,
Yeah.
and there's no civilization up there, right?
No.
I was really surprised by this. Nobody lives up there.
Yeah. I think sometimes people think that like electricity comes from unicorn farts, right?
Right.
It's all.
Yeah.
It's your pick your poison.
Right. And there's one other little camp, and he runs on jet fuel because he flies a lot of hunters and, people out of there. So he burns everything on jet fuel. So we could have charged on jet fuel. So we could have been on all of the fossil fuels right there.
Except coal.
Well, we were at coal when we were at the flow charger.
Yeah, that's right. So we
Yeah.
charge up at the flow charger in Fairbanks.
Yes.
And they get a lot of their power. Like most of the U.S. is about 70% non-renewable. Alaska, of course, is like over 90.
Yeah.
Non-renewable.
Right. Yeah.
The rivers freeze up, so they can't really do that.
No.
Hydroelectric.
No. Right.
And solar would be challenging in
There's no sunlight
in the winter.
in the winter.
So that
Right.
leaves you with air, I guess. You could do wind
Yeah.
power. But yeah, the only thing that made this actually doable, and this is where it got really hard, is the fact that it was sunny. Well, the sun was out it wasn't sunny, it was raining all the time, but it was out 24/7. That was great.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was fun to experience that.
Yeah.
In Deadfoot, I slept in the camper, so I couldn't really make it dark. But I did all right. But your body just goes into a whole nother mode of you don't need as much sleep because the light's telling you
it's
to,
like
to
midnight, you're
keep
like
going.
wide awake.
Yeah, it was interesting.
So let's talk about the Dalton Highway. So the Dalton Highway was built in the 70s because of the Alaskan Pipeline, and basically it runs along the Alaskan Pipeline.
Yeah.
And so it's this trip is definitely about the journey, not the destination, because when you get up to Dead Horse, Prudhoe Bay, it's not a great town, right? It's just...
It's not a town. You can't really call it a town.
No, there's a general store up there with like 15 years of dust on everything.
Everything's built on stilts.
And then Napa Auto Parts, that's it.
Yeah.
One hotel, one really bad hotel that we stayed at,
right.
the Aurora, and
a lot of oil equipment.
Yeah, people fly up there for 2 weeks, they work, and then they fly back down to Anchorage, and then take a week off.
It's
a work
there's
site.
no bars because you can't drink up there.
No drinking.
So there's no bars, there's no place to go hang out. When people are up there, it's for work, right? And very few, I notice it, it's smart not to bring your pull-behind camper.
Oh, yeah, no.
It would destroy your pull-behind, unless you want to take forever to get there.
So,
you don't take your motor home.
No, don't take your motor home.
And very few people venture up there unless you just want to say, I made it. And that's what we were doing, right?
People go to the Arctic Circle, which is like 120 miles.
And then turn around and go back.
Get a little certificate and then zip back.
Right.
Take a picture by the sign. And then a lot of motorcyclists go all the way because it's a big motorcyclist thing. But the road is daunting because some of it is paved, but a lot of it is mud.
Yeah.
A very soft shoulder, sinkholes. And then you have a lot of wildlife. There's we saw muskox, we saw caribou. We didn't see bears. We saw that moose in the lake. That was cool.
Yeah,
eagles, all kinds of stuff. And then you go over the highest point, Attican Pass, which is 6,000 feet above sea level, and that's once again just a dirt road going over. And then the most daunting thing about it is there's just a ton of trucks.
Yeah.
So basically, you got to keep Dead Horse supplied. Because while the oil comes from there, it's not distilled, right? You have to...
They don't make gas up there.
No, it's got to go...
They have to bring it all the way back up from the refineries. I should say refined.
I don't think they distill gas. I think they refined it. But they
right.
got to bring it up. And everything
Natural
they got to bring
gas.
up, right? So it's just a lot of trucks. And they say that you're going to break a windshield, which we did on the hybrid. We somehow didn't break it on the Lightning. Yeah, we were surprised.
But we do have lots of rock chips on the front of the Lightning.
Yeah, your car is going to feel it.
Yeah, it's going to catch some,
Because they don't, those trucks do if they're going slow, they're doing 50.
Yeah.
But they're doing 70. And they know every corner.
Yeah.
And they don't move over. You move over.
Yeah. And the mud can be thick.
Yeah.
We had so much mud caked on the truck.
We had 50 pounds. It took us I think it took us $30 at the car wash to just get the mud off. Not clean it, just to get the mud off.
Oh, and one of the gripes I have about
this.
the Ford is the wheels, because they're very aerodynamic, right? So they have a lot of aluminum on the outside. Well, what happened is all the mud goes up inside the wheel and cakes on the inside of the rim, and it throws the balance off on the tires.
Yeah, so you get that kind of that wiggle in the steering wheel.
Yeah, and then when we got back to civilization, I was trying to wash it off.
Couldn't do it.
It was impossible.
You can't get
because of the way the
there.
wheel is made for aerodynamics. It is virtually impossible to get the mud. And so we're driving around, like this because we can't get the mud out of
He's making the handshaking sign.
Yeah, so Ford needs to look at that.
Or don't drive in mud.
Or, stay on the pavement.
Stay on the pavement, yeah. Now, me and you drove the Lightning. We took turns, and the boys drove the chase truck. So let's talk about what happened when we get to Coldfoot. So we get to Coldfoot. Let me describe Coldfoot. It's a truck stop. There's a restaurant, and then there's a big double-wide, long, I guess it's a hotel.
Trailer house.
Yeah.
It's
everything's
modular.
Yeah, it's modular.
Right. It's built on stilts.
Because you're on tundra, so you don't want it to sink into the ground when it heats up. And it's expensive. It's
very.
$250 for, I would say, the grossest hotel room I've been in the last 10 years, except when I was up there with Tommy.
Let's put it this way. Our wives would have turned around and said, let's go home.
Yeah, imagine the smell of chemicals, camouflaging the smell of human sweat, camouflaging dog poo, camouflaging mold, camouflaging, But
I was lucky because I claimed the camper.
Yeah, you were in the
camper. Thank you, four-wheel camper.
Thank you, four-wheel camper.
I didn't have to sleep in that.
So we roll into town because this is where we have to start talking about time.
Yeah, yeah.
So we roll into town. It probably took us because we had to charge, we had to go slow. So what we did was, after we got to Camp Yukon, we figured out that we're not going to make it if we're driving the normal speed.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I got to slow down. And I slowed down too much. I slowed down to 35.
Yeah.
And that adds probably another hour or two.
Yeah.
And then, of course, turn off the HVAC. And then we roll into cold foot with 1% left. And now we got a dead battery, and we have another 250 miles to go, and no DC.
And they're shutting down the kitchen and finding somebody that knows where to charge, because we had already made contact with the people there.
Yeah, but they weren't there, or they didn't care.
And they said, yeah, you can plug in.
Yeah.
But finding that person was difficult. By the time we found that person, they were super nice. Opened up the garage.
So let me tell a story. So we find this guy who's got the key to the shed, which is the maintenance building.
Yep, the welding shed.
And we find his girlfriend, and she's like, yeah, he's taking a shower. I'm like, well, could you please get him?
Right.
So 45 minutes later, now it's like midnight. I'm like, that's a long shower.
Yeah.
But he finally comes strolling out, and he was clean.
Well, yeah.
He smelled good. So he had taken a shower. So he comes strolling out.
Unlike us.
Yeah. And I'm so nervous about this point, because I'm like, we are, if we have to charge at this point off the hybrid, it's going to be 20 hours.
Yeah.
To fill up.
We'll lose a whole day.
We'll lose a whole day, right? And we had reservations, and we had, we have a schedule we have to keep, because eventually we have to ship the trucks back.
Right.
And there's a boat waiting for him. So I'm super nervous. You're all chill. The guy goes in the shed and throws out this extension cord with a box with a typical triple plug, right? And I was over the moon. I'm like,
yeah,
we got a welder.
Yeah.
And I think you were in the bathroom or something, and I'm excited.
I was there about that time, but I looked at it.
You come strolling down, you look at it, and you're like, no.
No. We don't have an adapter for that. I'm sorry, Roman. No adapter.
I'm like, we got 5 adapters, David. Any one of these.
This is an old 3-prong, probably a welder. They probably wheel a welder out of the garage to fix trucks or whatever.
So it's a 50 amp. I'm over the moon, but we have no way to plug into it.
Yeah. So we asked the guy, do you have something else?
Yep.
He took us in the barn, and there was a 30 amp with a 3...
Like a dryer plug.
A dryer, old dryer, which is a 3-prong.
And we have brought along an extension cord. I think a 50-foot extension cord.
We have plenty of extension cord.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, we roll it out. And now we have 2 chargers in the truck. We have the 4 charger. Yep. And we have that's a 30 amp. We have the 40 amp that we bought. And the one that we bought actually tells you on the screen how many amps you're pulling. Yeah. And the Ford, this is another gripe I have with the truck. It doesn't give you a lot of information. It doesn't give you enough compared to a Tesla. It's it's nothing. It doesn't tell you how much energy you're burning. No. It doesn't tell you by segments. So the only way that you can figure out how long it takes is you plug it in. There's a little circle that lights up, and then there's, I think, 5 segments on the circle next to the plug-in, and that starts blinking blue. Yep. Unless you get the red circle of death, which means it's not charging. But anyway, it starts blinking blue. And then you have to open the door in the truck. And then there's this whole graphic that plays, right? Yeah. You have to wait for all that to go through. And the first time you do it, it's kind of cool. The 80th time, you're like, oh, come on. Yeah, show me. And then it shows you how long until the charge that you want. Yep. And if you want to see the percentage in the battery, you have to actually start it up, go in the infotainment screen, choose the truck, choose settings, choose charge. So that's 3 things you got to get to give you the percentage of battery that is there. Yeah. So we plug it in, and I was bummed because it said 20 hours. Yeah. Because it's a 30 amp, right? Yeah, it's a 30 amp. But I'm exhausted at this point. And by the way, if you're wondering why I wasn't on the first part of the trip, I was in Korea. So I got invited, and if you watch all TFL, which is where we keep all of our content in one place, you know that I was in Korea. So I basically flew in from Korea to Fairbanks. Yeah, to do this. So that's why I wasn't on the first part. Yeah. And so at this point, I'm exhausted. You know, I'm still on Korean time, which is 8 hours ahead and 2 days back or something. So I just wanted to go to the hotel room and fall asleep. So you did. I did, and then luckily you. You saved the day. Yeah. Tell the story now. I was a little unsure about everything, so I sat in the driver's seat. It's midnight. And about 10 minutes later, it clicks off, right? And we blew the breaker. So I go in the shop, look all around, find the breaker box. And I'm glad these are super nice people up there, right? Very trusting. And we flip the breaker. 10 minutes later, flips it again. 10 minutes later, it flips it again. So I'm thinking, okay, what do I do? Did you know it would go off? How'd you know it went off? Well, I didn't want to go to sleep. I didn't go to sleep. You were in the truck. I sat in the truck. Oh, I wasn't about to go to sleep. Okay.
yet.
Oh, thank you.
So I sat there just watching it. About after the fourth time, I said, "This ain't working."
Well,
right?
it wasn't, yeah.
And I had, what are my options? I don't have an adapter for the other one.
So the reason I should say was flipping it is because we had the 40 amp charger, right? So we could have gone to the 30 amp, and it
No,
would have,
that was the 30 amp.
Oh, it was blowing the 30 amp.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it was blowing the 30 amp.
Okay.
Okay. And I don't know if it's because it's so much cord or what, but it's blowing the 30 amp. So I didn't want to wake you up. Plus, if I woke you up, what are you going to do, right? So I figured I got to
go back to sleep because of being stressed.
Right. So I got to figure this out on my own because, we have to charge.
Yeah.
We have we just have to. So and I'm going to tell you guys, I don't want to tell you this, but because there's some electricians that are going to roast me, okay? But it's the only option I have. We had a 30 amp plug that had a different configuration that would not fit in that plug that they had for us. So I brought my toolbox, I got out my grinder, and I ground down some of the posts. The round one, the ground, I ground it to round, and then I took the two live posts, you got two, 120, 120, and they were at an angle, and I had to make them into straight, and I had to grind this one down because it has to be skinnier. So I bent them straight, I ground this one down, and I thought, and it's raining, and it's 39 degrees outside, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning, okay? And I reluctantly plug it in, and voila, it worked.
The skies open up. And
the skies open up, and I
charging.
start charging at 38 amps, right? And I just, hallelujah. And but I went and sat in the seat for a little longer and just watched, and it worked. It worked great. So I finally went to sleep, went in the back of the truck, got to sleep, and I woke up. I wake up just because I was worried, and I'd look, and it was still charging. So all was good. But
it said like 50% the next day.
But yeah, it wasn't going to be full charge until 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, I know. It's horrible. And the good news is there wasn't an electrical inspector within, let's say, 200 miles.
No. Right.
Maybe 250 miles.
And it's raining. I'm not going to burn anything down, right?
Exactly.
I'm not going to catch the forest on fire.
Yeah, it's raining hard.
Right.
And let's talk about raining because
okay.
When we started this, we said you bought all this stuff so we could like cook and grill and camp. So in my mind, when you bought all this, I was like, we'll sit around the tailgate, we'll get a campfire, we'll just enjoy a lovely evening telling stories, and none of that happens for two reasons, because there's two weather conditions up there.
Well, one's not a weather, but
I call it a weather.
Oh.
So it's raining or it's mosquitoes.
Right. Yeah.
One or the other, or sometimes both.
Either one was unpleasant to cook outside in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there are billions of mosquitoes, and they
Right.
would, the second you open the door, they would just inundate the truck and inundate you, so that you would run indoors screaming.
Oh, and this brings me to a point. I know some people probably interested in the camper. So the tailgate has, it's not a slide in. It has the openings in the tailgate, and you're probably wondering, well, do mosquitoes find their way through those little, and does the dust? Yeah, the dust does a little bit, but the mosquitoes don't. I never had a problem with mosquitoes in the camper with the Project M.
We did have problems with mosquitoes in the cab, though. We were
right. Every time we opened the door.
we spent the next 2 hours killing mosquitoes.
Right.
So there was not a lot of that romantic sitting by the campfire, listening to
Yeah, in the wilderness of Alaska.
No.
We had hoped.
It was either cold, and when you say raining, it's also like in the 50s up there.
We wore a jacket every day.
Yeah. And it's cold, and it's mosquito.
As you guys are all sweltering in the heat down here, we were enjoying the cool.
And then you're, once again, I said it's a truck stop, so there's a bunch of trucks lined up that are, of course, idling, because that's what truckers do.
Yeah.
This is not a pleasant.
Right. But I still slept good.
Yeah, anyway, so the problem, once again, is when we have a schedule and you have to charge till 3, it pushes you into the next day very quickly, right?
Yep.
So we gave up, I think, at 90%.
We did.
Yeah, we did, because I was like, I can't sit here any longer.
No. Let's get going.
And the nice part is we knew it was a little shorter to get to Dead Horse from Cold Foot heading north, and we knew that once we got above Attican Pass, the trees go away, and then it's kind of a rolling downhill into Dead Horse.
The big plain of Prudhoe Bay,
Yeah. So
which is very flat.
Yeah, so we hit the road. You kept it in the 40-mile zone.
Yep.
And we used as much 1 foot braking. And let me describe what that is. Basically, when you drive with 1 foot, every time you let off the accelerator, you get regen, which is like hitting the brake.
Yeah.
So if you do it enough and long enough, you learn that it can be smooth and you can regen. But you'll never put more energy into the truck.
Yeah.
You'll just not use energy. So basically, if you're at the top of Attican, and let's say you're at 50%, by the bottom, you'll still be at 50, but you'll now have driven like 10 miles for free.
Yeah.
It'd be like freewheeling.
We regened probably 80% of what we use going up, 70 to 80%, I'm guessing.
And that's a steep up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty
Right.
terrifying, because I was watching, and I thought we're never going to make this 240 miles.
Yeah.
And then miraculously, when we got to the top, it was a really great downhill section.
Yeah, and it was nice and straight downhill because you're following the river, right? Prudhoe Bay is like this big plain of sediment that occurred millions of years ago or whatever, and it's just this nice gradual flat.
Yeah, and so think about this. You're at 6,000 about at the top of Attican, and Prudhoe, Dead Horse, same thing. It's just two different names.
So hypermiling, I mean, we went 240 miles on 90%.
And 90%.
And made it.
And made it, yeah. And
with 2 or 3% left?
Something like that. It was very little percentage.
Yeah. But we pulled into Prudhoe Bay, into Dead Horse at 11.
Yeah, so it was terrifying because we're going from 6,000 to sea level, but that meant that on the way back, we had to go from sea level to 6,000.
Right.
And then you never go back down to sea level. You maybe I think Coldfoot's like at 2,000 or 3,000 feet above sea level. And it's incredible like how attuned you become to. That's another big difference, right? You become attuned to how much energy you're using.
Yep.
Your eyes are glued on that little how many miles am I getting per kilowatt?
Right. You were, and you're trying to hypermile it in any way you can.
Yeah.
Now the speed limit is 50, and most of the time we were going 45, 43. We set it at 43, which, there's hardly anybody up there, so very few people passed us, so it wasn't a danger thing. But it takes a while to get somewhere at that speed.
So let me put this into perspective for you guys. When Tommy and I did it the first time, so me and Tommy had been up there, right? We did a series maybe now 8 years ago called Motor Mountain USA, where we drove a Jeep Wrangler to the 50 highest points in all 50 states, right?
Cool.
And luckily, Tommy and I got to do the Alaska part. So we drove the first day to Coldfoot and, stayed at that horrible hotel.
Right.
And paid a lot of money for, like $30 for a buffet that is worth maybe $5. I'm being, but once again, you're up there and they're like, pay it or don't.
It's the only game in town, right?
They're going to charge whatever.
And you're glad it's there.
Yeah, and gas wasn't that much. I think it was like $6.50 up there.
Yeah.
And then it got expensive when we got to Dead Horse.
Yeah, 8 something.
8, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we decided to drive because we had to go to the top of Attican Pass, right? That's the highest point in Alaska you can drive to. You can't drive up Denali. It's much taller, 17,000.
Right.
So, and then we got there, like, we're here, let's go to Dead Horse. So we drove to Dead Horse, and we got there. This is, once again, the journey, not the destination, because Dead Horse is not a pretty town.
No.
And we said, screw this, it's light, let's just drive all the way back.
That's the most exciting thing.
Yeah.
All the caribou, they were kind of going between all the oil field equipment. Yeah.
So the journey that took us 4 days, we did in 2. Right, that one day we drove 250 to Dead Horse, and then just turned right around and drove back to Fairbanks. And got back to Fairbanks at like 2 in the morning, and so we drove 750 miles. There's no way you're doing that.
Yeah.
In an electric vehicle up there.
No.
And even if you had fast charging, you're not going to do that.
No.
So you did some math. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what kind of math you did. What did you figure out?
Well, first of all, we want to thank the people that let us charge, because we charged for free at Dead Horse, right?
Yes.
Yeah, we bought two rooms, and we ate there, but they let us plug in for free.
Really, this you'll see this in the video series. This journey would have not been possible without the kindness of strangers.
Yes, right.
And the Hill Corps people were great.
Yep.
What was the guy who let us charge for free up there?
So it was Greg.
Greg, thank you, Greg. So
Greg, he worked for a construction company up there that was, a supplier for equipment.
So let me finish this part of the story,
Okay.
and then you tell us about what math you did.
Sure.
So we get up to Dead Horse the second day at midnight, and even though it's light out, it looks like middle of the afternoon. Everybody's asleep.
Oh,
And then
yeah, town is dead.
Yeah, yeah. And we're like looking, we couldn't find the charger. So we're exhausted at this point. We're trying to find it wasn't a charger, it was just an outlet on the side of a wall on a warehouse, basically.
Yes.
And luckily, we're driving around. It's all private property, right? Because it's all corporate.
Yeah, right.
And we're like probably on private property, and this security guy rolls by, and he's like, "What are you guys doing here at midnight?" And I'm like, "We're looking for an outlet." And he goes, "Aren't you TFL?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then he was like, "Oh, I watch your videos." And there's a lot of truck guys.
A lot of that happened.
A lot of that up there.
Yeah.
A lot of truck guys. Alaska has a lot of truck.
Yeah.
Oddly, it's all Fords up there.
Well, no, there's a lot of GMs, but
No.
dead horse. Yeah, a lot
Ford.
of Fords there.
And then you get to like Anchorage.
Heavy duties.
Yeah, and you get to Anchorage and it's all GM.
Yeah.
It's really odd.
Yeah, that town is full of heavy duties.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
it.
Yeah. And that's what I think I would have too. Up there.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, so he's like, "Oh yeah, because we're charging at was it Greg? Was that his name?
Greg was the owned the construction, or ran the construction.
Yeah, so he shows, "Oh, I know, these guys have moved." So he takes us to the warehouse, and lo and behold, there's basically the dryer plug out there.
It was more than that. It was a 50 amp.
It was a 50
it's,
amp.
It's a NEMA. It's called a NEMA 1450.
Okay.
Okay. And 14 is the NEMA means it has to do with the shape, right? And 14, and then 50 means it's a 50 amp.
So
and we have the normal plug-in for the EV chargers that Ford gives you, and the one we had are a NEMA 1450, and he's got that on the wall. So we plug in, we pull in, we plug in. I climb in the back. I know we're not going to have any trouble there. And it charged all night. You guys went to your room.
Yep.
But there again, it wasn't going to be full until 2 or 3 o'clock the next day.
yeah, and once again, midnight. Now we're charging for 17 hours, something.
But
like that.
luckily, we had already booked a little sightseeing tour.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
let's before we get
Okay.
to the sightseeing tour.
Oh, okay.
Tell me
So-
what kind of math you did.
All right, so yeah, we charged for free in Dead Horse too, right?
So
we cost us a few T-shirts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
TFL T-shirts.
So I've been kind of dissing the Coldfoot, but they were very nice.
Yeah, they
gave
were.
us very nice
The
people.
food wasn't bad.
Yeah, the food was okay. The
Yeah.
hotel was, but the people were incredible.
Very nice.
So thank you for letting us charge.
Yeah.
And thank you for letting us charge for free in Dead Horse as well.
Yep. And then we had to charge for free again. So from Fairbanks to Deadfoot back to Fairbanks is 1,000 miles.
Yep.
Okay. So it cost us nothing. But if we did have to pay for it at the rate that you would normally pay at a fast charger,
Just like
which
what?
30, we paid as much as 60 cents one time, but let's say it averages 33 cents a kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
It would have cost us somewhere around $150 to $160
To make that round trip.
to make that round trip, 1,000 miles. Okay.
Fair enough. Okay.
So I wanted to see what if I had taken the little Duramax, the 3-liter Duramax with the same camper on it. If you were hypermiling that, I'm going to guess you would get around 30 miles to the gallon.
Yeah. That's
Because
fair.
because it's not going to have much wind load, and it's probably going to, and it has a 22-gallon tank.
Okay.
It'll go 660 miles, so it wouldn't go the whole way. You wouldn't be able to go all the way up and back.
still
You'd
have
have
to
to
fill
fill up. If we average the fuel cost, it would have been about $220.
So a little bit more expensive.
So yeah, so maybe $50 more expensive. Okay, to take the little Duramax.
But let's say you're charging an average of 15 hours. We had to do it 3 times, but 45 hours less.
Less of charging.
Yeah.
So let's say I took my old pickup,
All right, yeah.
okay?
Yeah, let's
My
talk about
92 GMC that gets, on a good day, gets 13 miles to the gallon. It would have cost me $500 in fuel
Wow.
to drive all the way up there. If I take my Cummins,
Yeah.
which gets pretty decent mileage, especially at that speed, it would have probably been about $325.
Good.
So, it's anywhere from $50 to $350 more to drive from Fairbanks back to Fairbanks on a 1,000-mile trip up there. Okay.
Yeah, so that's the economics of it.
Yeah.
But the real cost, of course, is time.
Is time. Yeah. We figured out our time, we're sitting there twiddling our thumbs and.
But hold on. All right, having said that,
Okay.
it's not that simple. Because what happened when we got back to Camp Yukon, or Yukon Camp, on the way back on?
Yes.
Tell them what happened there.
So, luckily we had the hybrid along, and it has an incredible range.
Yes.
Okay. it can go, like, under those conditions, maybe 700 miles.
Yeah, which is really good.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we didn't have a fuel problem,
Right.
but when we got to Yukon, they were out of gas.
There was a line of like 15 motorcycles, 5
Not
vans.
only there was a line of motorcycles, there was a guy who had been there since last night
Yeah, he had just driven up.
waiting for fuel.
Which I get the motorcycles because most motorcycles, have a range of like 200, maybe 250 if
Yeah,
you're lucky.
yeah.
But the guy, why he didn't fill up in Fairbanks, right?
Right.
Because they say if you're going to take the Dalton Highway, you need 2 spare tires, you need a
Yeah.
radio, and you need a full tank of gas.
Yeah.
Why he didn't fill up in Fairbanks, I have no clue.
Yeah, so it was fun to watch as we were charging.
They were waiting.
Yeah.
So we were both waiting.
And we got in the camper and we were, eating in the back of the camper to get out of the mosquitoes. We were just watching them line up, and it takes forever to fuel up there.
Oh, yeah, because you got one pump.
Right.
And there were like 30 vehicles.
And you have to pay before the next person can use it. So the line took forever for everybody to filter through there.
It's not like you throw your credit card in the pump.
No.
Right? You go to the restaurant.
Right.
They take your credit card. You pay. And then you go pump.
Right, and then you go move your vehicle, and the next one can pull up.
Yeah.
So it was a little comical to
So
watch.
it was funny because we were the ones, who were like,
Yeah.
we're,
Yeah, there were
now
probably
it's your
some
turn.
people making fun of us. We have one truck plugged into the other, charging right there, but they're in a line of traffic trying to get fueled up. So
So, I
Little
like
dichotomy.
to say,
irony, I call it irony.
people look at this and they'll ask the question, why'd you do it? Well, we did it, like, why do people climb Everest? Because
Yeah.
we want to be the first to drive an electric
Yeah.
truck that far. People have driven Teslas up there.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
that's not, a big deal. So we're not the first, but we were the first to do a truck. And a Tesla would have had much better range because it would have
Sure.
had much better aerodynamics.
Yeah, of
and,
course.
much better efficiency. Now, speaking of that, there's a rally going up there.
Yeah, but the point I think you're trying to make is, we weren't trying to prove anything.
No, we weren't trying to
We
prove
were just we're informing you about what it takes to, if you were to buy a truck like this, what it can and can't do, right? How you would want to use it, the proper way to use it. You wouldn't want to use your Lightning to do long camping trips.
No.
That's just, intuitive, right? But it's fun to watch somebody trying to do this, right?
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
very fun to do this.
I watch the videos and people are saying, hey, you're trying, we do an electric car or truck video. People are like, you're promoting EVs. No, we're not promoting EVs.
No.
We're just
No.
trying to figure out, we're kind of living in a really cool time from when we're going, like the last time this happened, we went from horse and buggy to the Model T, right?
Yeah.
We're living through that time again.
Yeah.
And so, we're at electric truck 1.0 versus internal combustion engine truck 20.0 or whatever it is,
Yeah.
right? And so it's really interesting to be able to be the first to do something.
And what I really learned from this is how comfortable. Because my diesel trucks, they're loud. They, it just, you got to listen to the engine for hours and hours at a time. It is so quiet. So quiet.
And torquey.
Oh, yeah. And when you go up a hill, like when you're driving your 454 like I have, or even, your diesel truck, what your max limit is when you go to pass somebody. That there's a point where you're going to, not going to be able to gain any more speed going up a hill. With the Lightning, it feels endless. You're around somebody in a heartbeat. Even with 8,000 pounds with the camper and all our gear. It's just incredible. And you do it so quiet. It's just a funny, unique sensation.
Yeah, people may look at us and think, it's no fun doing what you're doing because you're stressed out. You're spending a lot of time just doing nothing, which is true.
Yeah.
You're like riding a bicycle. You're watching every hill and just completely demoralized when you see the next one. That happened to us on the way down.
Right.
But also, I would say that in struggle there is reward. Right, and so if you were just to drive it in a regular vehicle without having any concern for range, it would get boring, right? There's once you get past Attican Pass, there's nothing to see.
Yeah.
It's all tundra.
Right.
This is at least entertaining, kind of a video game way. Would you want to do it with your wife on vacation?
No.
Probably not. No. But to be the first to do it, hell yeah, it was fun.
It was fun.
It was fun. Yeah. It was fun.
And we learned a lot about charging times, depending on what outlet. I mean, we didn't know any of this before, right?
No.
We didn't know
It's
what
a whole new world.
how a dryer outlet compared to a range outlet compared to a welder's outlet, how long they took. We didn't know it, the hybrid, how long that took. We learned all that while we were doing it.
Now, I asked you this question, and I want to ask you it again. We did a video where we took 2 trucks, a gas truck and the Lightning, and we towed with it. And the Lightning was able to barely do 100 miles of towing a 6,000-pound trailer, right?
Right.
And that video got passed around on conservative media. Breitbart picked it up, and it got a lot of views. And basically, people used that video to say electric vehicles suck. I'm just, which is certainly something I can see why you would say that.
Yeah.
So why do you think conservatives especially hate electric vehicles so much? What is it about them that makes them like? It's become like a political flashpoint, like masks now.
Yeah, I mean, you read the comments and you realize how hot of a topic this is, and I think it's mainly because it's being mandated in places, like California, and you want it to happen naturally. Naturally, people will find out that electric vehicles, they'll have their place. I mean, a plumber, an electrician, a salesman, car parts delivery, they will find the electric truck a perfect place to use it, right? It's quiet. It'll plug in at night. It'll save you money. It's simple.
There's no maintenance for the.
There's
most
no
part.
maintenance.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's got a frunk. You can store your
if we
tools.
could just naturally do this transition without politicians being involved in it, it wouldn't be such a hot topic.
Yeah.
But the politicians are what make it such a hot topic, and it's unfortunate. They just need to let it happen natural, and it will, right? Because I found out how fun it is to drive an electric truck. I mean, it's cool. I mean, it's fast. Not that I'd have to go fast, but.
And let's keep in mind, you love old Cummins diesels. So
I do.
You're not exactly.
No. I like 454s. I like.
You're not
I like old iron.
Yeah, you're not the first guy who's going to go into the Ford dealership and buy.
No, but I could see myself having the Lightning Pro, and let's say as a handyman, which I did a lot of that in my days. It's the perfect truck for that, right? You plug it in at night. It has 1,700 pounds of payload or whatever. You can put a lot of tools in it. You never go to the gas station.
And speaking of the Pro, the guys at Hillcorp are really wonderful up there. They're the ones who run the oil fields, right?
Yeah.
They do a lot of the running. And this is something I had no clue about. So anyway, let me finish one thought before I get to another. They invited us back because they said they got 4 Pros coming.
Yeah.
And they want to try them in the middle of winter in Dead Horse where it gets 40 below.
Yeah.
And that truck only has 240 miles of range. So I said I would come back there and do a video on what it's like to have a Lightning at 40 below at the furthest northernmost point in the U.S.
That'll be fun.
Yeah, that'll be fun. But so here's what I didn't know. So anywhere from like 85 to 95% of Alaska's budget comes from
oil.
And that oil all comes from up there. That's the biggest. But I didn't know this. Apparently, the oil comes out as a milkshake. So it's not like, not like Beverly Hillbillies where this black stuff comes shooting out.
Right.
It's a milkshake. And they skim off 5% of it,
Yeah.
which is the oil. And then they're stuck with a lot of other things, including a giant collection of natural gas.
Right.
And they have no way to get that natural gas, and probably enough to power the U.S. for a while, to the lower 48. Right? You can't run it down the oil pipeline, and you could potentially ship it by barge or boat, but that
too expensive.
The sea also freezes like 8 months of the year.
Right.
So they pump it back into the ground
to store it
for
later,
and to pressurize it because they don't pump the oil out; it just kind of comes out on its own.
Yeah. And it pressurizes the ground so that the oil will naturally come to the surface.
I thought that was fascinating.
It is fascinating. And they use the excess to power their generator. So everything's powered by natural gas up there.
And the other thing that was fascinating was just how, like, in sync that it's a giant oil field with a ton of machinery, pipes going everywhere.
Right.
But you see all this like industrial, like imagine like an industrial movie with these like factories full of pipes, but then right next to it are like mama and baby birds, ducks,
the
caribous walking around,
birthing their young right there, and living in harmony.
Yeah, like the two are just completely you would think that this would be like an industrial wasteland, but it's not.
No,
it's like they've gone to a large extent to actually maintain the balance with nature, and nature is doing quite well up there.
It was fascinating to see. And it's huge. It's 40 miles by 30 miles, the oil field, right? Massive. and they have to build these gravel roads. It's like a big swamp, but it's all gravel and grass.
And you can't. And you got to build the buildings on top of stilts, because if you put them on the permafrost, they'll actually get too hot and sink into the permafrost.
Yeah, the whole thing is fascinating.
And so everything feels very like temporary. Because it's there to be moved. It's not there forever. And then one of the cool things we got to do is, and this is you have to sign up ahead of time, is we actually had to go into like a secure area to hit the ocean, the Arctic Ocean. Because there is a lake there when you get there, but that's not the ocean.
No. Yeah.
And then going to the ocean is kind of anticlimactic because it's,
just
it's an ocean.
And it's surrounded by other, banks of gravel. I mean, gravel everywhere. It's just this one big gravel pit, basically.
A lot of gravel,
A lot of gravel.
A lot of caribou, a lot of gravel,
and grass.
A lot of tundra.
Grass, gravel, caribou, and pipe. It's
and
fascinating.
4 heavy duties.
But apparently, and this is interesting too, in these times. I mean, you're not going to make any political statements, but they're at like 15% capacity right now. They're hard. Normally, there's 10,000 people that are up there at any one time.
And they're like 1,200 only.
Yeah, 1,200, 2,000 people. They're not pumping any oil.
Yeah. It's only a fraction of what it's capable of. And we asked the people why they did that, and they said the Biden administration canceled a lot. I don't want to get political, but this is what they said.
Yeah.
They said the Biden administration canceled a lot of leases, and they're not willing to invest in the infrastructure when they're not sure what. And that to me makes sense. I don't know what the politics of that are, but I do know that people in Alaska get
royalty from
it. Yeah.
And they're pumping a fraction of what they could.
Yeah.
In fact, they have to have a certain amount of oil go down the pipeline even for it to work, right? The pumps won't work unless there's a certain amount. So they're at that minimum amount now.
Which to me seems counterintuitive, because right now oil is very expensive.
Yeah, it's just weird. Times are weird.
Yeah, we hit like a barrel per barrel at the highest price ever.
Yeah.
And these guys aren't really pumping much. So
yeah.
Anyway, that's what we did learn up there. But
we did.
Let's just get back to electric vehicles. So to me, I used to live in Prague, right? Mm-hmm. And I used to help people relocate. I would find them apartments. And I noticed that the people who made themselves miserable in Prague were the people who would start comparing the Czech Republic to America. So these were mainly American expats, right? So there were a lot of things you couldn't get in the Czech Republic, including like Diet Coke. So they would always compare, well, at home, I could go to the store 24/7, and here they close at 5 or on the weekends.
Right.
And so I would always tell them, like, it's not better, it's not worse, it's just different.
Yeah.
And I think that's, to me, a good way to look at electric vehicles.
Yeah.
I don't think they're better. I don't think they're worse.
No.
They're just different. To me, a gas vehicle is kind of right brain, right? And it's like your heart. You're thinking with your emotions, right?
Yeah.
You got that sound. You got the smell. You've got the gasoline running through your veins, right? You can supercharge. You can turbocharge it. You can do a lot of stuff to it that you can do yourself, and that's very satisfying and very gratifying. It becomes like this thing you become very attached to, because it's almost alive, right?
Yeah.
The engine, especially like on a Harley, right? You got almost that heartbeat, like right? It almost feels like it's alive.
And I feel that way about my diesel truck.
Yeah.
I can hook up my trailer. I can go for miles and miles. It chugs along with very few issues. Because it doesn't have DEF.
I think we'll have to beep that out. All right, that was beeped out. Thank God.
But I can see myself having electric, and I can see people playing around with electric cars in the future, making them fast, making them just like they do now with gas cars.
Electric vehicles are like left brain, right? They're like a computer game or the computer.
Right.
So they're much more analytical, right? We just spent an hour talking about numbers.
Right.
So if you love that kind of analytical approach to vehicles, and they're also tunable to some extent, right? But the way you tune them is with the laptop. So it's not like you don't have gas running through your veins, maybe you have electrons running through your veins. I don't know, but there is also a passion that people get for gaming and for computers and for everything technological. And so it's much colder, it's much more analytical. But it's not worse or better. It's just different. Yeah, it's just different, and I can enjoy both.
Yeah.
We just sold the TRX, which is a perfect example to buy the Lightning. Mm-hmm. I love that TRX. There's no better truck. There is no better truck than the TRX right now, just for pure excitement of driving.
Right. The joy of the...
When you start that thing up and you hear that 6.2 liter Hemi...
It does everything except good fuel mileage. Right. Does everything.
But I don't love the Lightning any less. You know,
No.
the Lightning. I also love the Lightning for a completely different reason, right?
Yeah.
To me, it's quiet, and while the TRX is passionate and I'm involved.
Yeah.
Passion can get old after a while.
Yeah.
It gets stressful, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever had one of those like operatic relationships with your past girlfriend where you're always arguing? Right, it's great when you make up, but it sucks when you're not. And that's kind of that to me is like a gas truck. When it doesn't run or it does, it becomes frustrating.
Yeah.
But when it works, it's incredible. The Lightning, that is much more of a chill, right? It's much more like you have a stressful day, you get in the thing, and it's got a super comfortable ride, and you just kind of glide down the road.
4-wheel independent suspension. So it sucked up the Dalton Highway.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Like no other, I can't imagine anything, maybe the old Hummers or whatever that had 4-wheel independent suspension, possibly, but it was so smooth over the craziest of road. The frost heaves, you'd hit this frost heave and you go, whoosh, and it would just kind of like float.
It was like my dad's old Eldorado. It had that old American luxury car.
But we were at 8,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah, I know. It's a very different beast.
Yeah.
But if you hate electric vehicles because they represent, like the death of freedom for you, which I completely get, I would just say drive one before you completely go and completely turn your head against it or your heart against it.
I mean, the only knock I could see in the future is the grid going to handle if we just inserted all these electrical vehicles into the grid right now, can it handle it? That's the real question.
So when the Model T came out, there were no gas stations.
No, there wasn't.
And people figured it out.
Yeah. So it'll take time, but it'll happen eventually.
And I hope that both forms stick around a long time. I hope that, like you say, I hope that politicians don't jam this down people's throats. I think that if people naturally, and the interesting thing was that a lot of those guys up there working in the oil field, these are not like tree hugging liberals, right?
No, not at all.
Right? These are super duty driving hunters, who fly up, do a hard day's work and then go
very
home.
interesting. We found out when we were driving across the country the same thing. Yeah. A kid in a Gen 2 Cummins drove up and was asking questions. He was so intrigued by the truck, So I think so many people are intrigued by it, and it's not just this one segment of, people who are just environmentally friendly. It's everybody, right? I mean, it's a cool truck.
So for me, if I wanted a truck that I needed to cross country, or if I wanted a truck that I needed to tow, we have a Ram 2500 Cummins. I love that truck. I would go for that truck. I would grab the keys to that any day.
Yeah.
Right. But driving it around Boulder or Denver or where we live, I'll take the Lightning.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely.
So it's like the right tool for the right job. And just because the Cummins is not graded around town doesn't make it a crap truck. The same way the Lightning, which sucks at towing right now, doesn't make it a crap truck either, right?
Right.
They're just very different animals,
for a different purpose.
tools. Yeah. And we stretched the envelope on the use of Lightning, and we ran into trouble.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. Well, we ran into.
We made it work, but you couldn't do it by yourself.
No, we had a team of 4 people.
Yeah. Right.
All right. Well, guys, let us know what you think in the comments below. David, thank you very much for going on this trip with me.
Thank you, Roman. It was a blast. I mean, it was 2 weeks long. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah.
Well, except for maybe waiting hours to charge.
Yeah, you're a very impatient man, and I'm a very impatient man. So it's frustrating when you get up at to be fair, I got up at 10 because I was so jet lagged.
Right.
Well, let's say you get up at 8, and then you look at the truck and you're like, oh, God, I got 3 hours to spend in the truck stop.
Yeah. But thank you for taking me along.
Yeah, and let us know in the comments. We're airing those videos on TFL Truck, so you can see them at all TFL.
On Saturdays?
On Saturdays, every Saturday. We've got 3 more episodes, and I think, I'm being self-centered, but I think those are the most interesting.
You're going to enjoy them.
Yeah, I think so. You'll get to see the adventure firsthand, and I'm curious to see what you think, because, look, the Rivian, which was the first electric truck to become popular, is, to me, that's more, it's a whole different thing. That's more of an adventure truck, right? That is a truck that if you want a lifestyle, you want to go camping in in kind of a cool sort of way, right? Where you're, I don't know, at the beach, right? That's a truck, right? The Lightning is much more of a traditional truck. So
I did like that about it because we were kind of incognito for people who aren't just big into trucks.
Yeah, if you don't know it, you won't.
No,
you'll be like, it's just another F-150.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So a very different animal from the Rivian. That's a lifestyle truck. This is a truck.
Yeah.
I say, watch the video.
Watch the video.
Yeah.
You'll enjoy it.
All right. See you guys next time. Ciao.